I'm Heather, and this is the Living with Addiction podcast, where I show you how you have more power than you realize when it comes to helping yourself and your child that's struggling with addiction. Good morning. So, I just recorded a couple of days ago such a great guest episode, and I'm so excited to share it with you. And I'm recording another guest episode this afternoon, and I've got a couple other ones lined up. So, towards the end of May and early June, I've got some very exciting guest episodes coming up that I can't wait to share with you guys. But today I'm going to go back to talking about feelings. And last week I talked about responding versus reacting. And I explained a little bit about how negative feelings are delivering specific messages about unmet needs. And I said I was going to go back and talk about several emotions this week and what they mean. But as I was preparing for this episode, I decided to focus on one specific emotion today. So I'll go back and talk about other emotions next week, but I think this emotion is worth dedicating some time to because so many of my clients have been stuck in this emotion. And I was stuck in it myself. And I think that it's just a particularly bad place to be. So it's definitely worth putting the time into and talking about in depth this one emotion. But before I get to that, I want to talk about today, I'm going to explain how our negative emotions work and why we have them. The human goal at its most basic level is just survival. Like, we don't care about thriving and fulfillment or anything else until we can meet our survival needs. If we don't understand our emotions and we shut them down and run from them or feel trapped by them and freeze in fear, then we are not meeting our survival needs, which means that we aren't going to work toward thriving and fulfillment until we're fully embracing our emotions. And that has been my experience, and it has proved true to me over and over again. That's why I'm spending so much time on emotions. They're so important to our overall happiness in life. So, because of our focus on survival and preservation at all costs, and we don't understand the signals of our feelings, we tend to feel very vulnerable and insufficient when it comes to handling our emotions. That's why we're always looking outside of ourselves to get our needs met. Sometimes we get a temporary false sense that our needs have been met by someone or something outside of us, but that really just is a missed opportunity to listen to what our feelings are signaling to us. It's a missed opportunity to learn about ourselves. We have the ability to meet all of our needs if we take the time to understand them. Now, I'm not saying that we don't need other people at all, but the goal is for you to be the primary source of getting your needs met, which is so empowering. And then whatever you receive from others is just the icing on the cake. You don't have to walk around needing something from somebody else all of the time. That's a horrible feeling. And a lot of people get stuck there, needing that, always looking outside of themselves. And even though I believe that every emotion is good, I'm going to use the term negative emotion in this podcast because it's the common reference that people use for an uncomfortable feeling. So I don't want to be sending the message that any emotion is negative, but it's just the common lingo. So that's what I'm going to use so that it doesn't get confusing as I talk about it. And I'll also be using the words emotions and feelings interchangeably. I'm thinking of them the same way. But every negative emotion has a purpose. It's signaling a specific unmet need to you. It's a need that your brain considers important for survival. Since emotions drive actions, the feeling is meant to push us to take the necessary survival action to fulfill our unmet needs. Here's the sad part, though. Since most of us don't understand our negative feelings and we see them as a nuisance, we want to run from them. They make us feel helpless. So we shut down our own emotions and often deliver that same message to our friends and families and kids. Like we say things like, don't be sad, it's okay. We say these things even when the other person clearly isn't okay because their discomfort makes us uncomfortable. And I want you to start noticing how you feel when people around you are experiencing negative emotions. Do you feel like you need to fix it for them or make them feel better? There's wisdom in our emotions. Sometimes we need to sit with them to learn from them. I don't know who this quote is from, but I had it written on a Post-it on my computer monitor for a long time. I think it was a couple of years. And it said, the medicine for the pain is in the pain. And my interpretation of that is that emotions are teachers. And when we are intentional with them and allow them, we can learn from them. Until my early 40s, I had very low tolerance for feelings or of my own or anyone else's. I'm sure you've heard me talk many times about how I just preferred to feel numb. Well, I used to tell my daughter that she wasn't allowed to whine when she was little because I thought kids who whined were annoying. And I'm just going to be really honest here about how I approached this part of parenting, even though I'm not proud of it at all. But I want to share it with you because I think that there's something to be learned here. And that was how I dealt with negative emotions. Shut it down. Today, I know that whining is an obvious signal for an unmet need. Kids whine because something is bothering them. They don't know how to fix it, so they whine in an attempt to seek help. Since we don't understand emotions or have a process to resolve whining, then we just want to shut it down. If I was raising my daughter today, with the knowledge that I have now, I would approach her whining totally different. I would ask her what's wrong. If she said she was sad, I would tell her why she's sad, like what sadness means. You're sad because you think you lost something or might lose something important to you, because that's the signal that sadness sends. It's telling you that you've lost something important to you and you need to get it back, replace it, or grieve if it can't be replaced. So I would ask her questions about it. I would say, was there really a loss or not? I would ask questions to figure that out. We'd talk about how she could get back what she lost. If she couldn't get it back, we would talk about how she could replace it. If it was something that happened to be irreplaceable, then we would talk about grieving losses. And after doing this a number of times, the whining would have ended on its own because she would have known how to work through her emotions. She would have just said to me, like, hey, I'm feeling sad because of this. She would have known. And I think that from a very early age, my daughter would have been capable of being walked through this process. And it's hard for me not to imagine what her life would be like today if I had taught her how to process her emotions like that from a young age. But I just didn't have the knowledge. And so I have to have compassion for both of us that was our experience. When she was older, I used to tell her she couldn't be mad when she got in trouble. I would also tell her that she should be happy and grateful because she had a good life, even though she was experiencing losses that she didn't know how to process. And looking back, I realized that some of her experiences actually were traumatic. But my view of trauma at the time was very uninformed. So I only thought of major traumas like war. I didn't realize that there were many levels of trauma possible. And because of my non existent ability to handle emotions, I believed that she should push down her sadness and focus on the positive. Like that was my answer to life. And all of my reactions to her feelings stemmed from me being uncomfortable with my own emotions. So, of course, I couldn't handle hers either. And my actions were also based on me personalizing everything. If she was whining as a little kid or unhappy as a teenager, then I was a bad mom. It was all about me, even though I didn't realize it at the time. So stop and ask yourself, how often do you get frustrated with your child's behavior because you think it makes you look bad as a parent? Probably more often than you realize. This comes up as the root cause of many parents' frustrations when we work together. We might think of our motives as parents like, we just have these altruistic motives because we care and we're giving. But the truth is, it always comes back to something about us. And if I knew what I know now, I would have allowed my daughter to have all of her feelings. Like, it's no big deal. I would have actually encouraged it. Of course, as a teenager, she got pissed when I would ground her, but I would tell her not to be mad about it because it was her fault that she was in trouble. But the truth is, as long as she wasn't being abusive or disrespectful, she had every right to pout and be angry. So think about how often you say no or set a boundary with your child, and then you want them to make you feel okay about it. Maybe you don't even realize that that's what you want, but here's a little clue that that's what you want. If you keep thinking of reasons to reach out to them or check on them after an unsettling incident and you're in some discomfort, then you're looking for their approval, whether you realize it or not. You want relief from that discomfort somehow. But the thing is, we have to learn to do that for ourselves. We can't depend on other people to do that for us. Not to mention, it's a lot of responsibility for everybody else as well when we can just fix it so much more efficiently on our own. It's such a waste of energy looking outside of ourselves for those answers. But now that I understand negative feelings and I no longer run from them, I don't have to run from my daughter or anybody else's negative feelings anymore. If my daughter and I are having an uncomfortable discussion and she says she's frustrated, I tell her I understand and she has every right to be. Or I ask her to tell me more about it because I truly am curious and I want to talk it out with her. I can handle it. But when I couldn't handle it, my response to my emotions was damaging to me. It was damaging to my daughter, and it was damaging to the other relationships in my life as well. That's why understanding what our emotions are signaling to us is so important. Like, as humans, we have feelings all day, every day, feeling after feeling after feeling. Living in some level of fear of them is like living in fear of oxygen. I mean, can you imagine running around trying to hide from oxygen, trying to hold your breath all the time because you don't want to breathe it in? Like, it sounds ridiculous, right? But when you think about it, it's just as ridiculous to try to hold in our emotions, tense up around them, and run from them. I mean, seriously, I want you to think about that. Okay, so the emotion I want to talk about today is apathy. Apathy is an emotion that so many parents have when they come to me. And even my other clients, like generally, it's a feeling of being stuck that makes people reach out for help. And apathy keeps us stuck because it's an emotion of inaction. That means we do nothing to meet our needs or fix what is bothering us. We do not meet the need that it is signaling to us. And apathy is the belief that I can't. I can't do anything about my situation, and no one else can help me either. It's such a hopeless, helpless feeling. And that sounds familiar, right? Like, think about how you feel about your child's addiction. Hopeless and helpless encompasses a lot of it. I got stuck here for a long time. I thought nothing would change, nothing would ever get better. I would never be able to help my daughter. And I felt like a total failure as a mother. And at my worst, I stayed in bed until 11 or 12 each day watching TV. I wasn't working at the time, so I didn't have a schedule to force me to do anything. Then I'd move to the TV room that didn't have any windows, and I'd lay in there in the dark with my dogs watching Shameless on Showtime for the rest of the day. Then at night, I'd move back to the bedroom and go to sleep. I lived in yoga pants and a flannel shirt. I never worked out. I barely left the house. I did that day after day. And it was honestly a really low point for me. My daughter hated me. She had moved out because she wasn't allowed to use drugs at home. I felt lost and devastated because I didn't think I'd get to be a mom anymore. I actually had to figure out that I still could be a mom and how to do it, but I really believed at that time that getting to be a mom was over for me because my daughter hated me so much. I had quit my job because I was burned out from overworking. I had completely lost myself in my daughter's addiction. I hardly ever laughed. My body always hurt. I didn't enjoy anything that I used to enjoy. I really didn't even know who I was at that point. That's what apathy looked like on me. And I feel so far removed from that version of me today that it's hard for me to even believe that that happened. And I have to have a lot of compassion for myself as I'm talking through this. Like, I find myself not wanting to believe that it was ever that bad, but it really was. And the message that apathy signals to us is that we need help, right? Like, I really needed help when I was going through that. But the problem is that apathy also creates the belief that help isn't possible. And it shows up to resistance to any help that's available to you. And it sounds like it won't work. I'm too busy. I'm too tired. I'm too depressed. I'm too overwhelmed. That was totally me. Even though I was laying around all day, every day, I was just too tired and overwhelmed to do anything. The only thing that I was doing to help myself at the time was going to counseling once a week. But the problem was I didn't read any of the books she recommended or do any of the work on myself that she recommended in between sessions. And this is like going to work out with a personal trainer once a week, but never doing anything in between sessions. I mean, you just don't get good results that way. That's not how you make changes in your life. But that's how I was approaching counseling. Like, something magic was going to happen in that 1 hour a week if I didn't do anything else for myself. And there was one thing that I wanted to do, but I didn't do it because, of course, I thought nothing would work. And I'd been listening to my mentor's podcast for a couple of years before I joined her program. And I wanted to join her program because I knew that it had helped other people, but I didn't believe it would help me. I needed help, but I was also resisting getting help because I didn't think anything would work. But lucky for me, my best friend bought a weight loss book that my mentor wrote, and she shared it with me. It was an audiobook, and something in that book got me out of apathy and into desire. I had a desire to lose weight. And the book gave me the courage to try. So I joined my mentor's coaching program for the weight loss tools. I still didn't believe anything could help with my daughter's addiction. I was still in apathy there as far as that was concerned. But I did believe I could lose weight using her tools, and I did. And Since weight loss involves serious thought work in her program, I started really changing how I thought about life in general. I started having higher quality thoughts that opened up my mind to the idea that help was possible with my daughter's addiction. I started creating new beliefs and moving into a place of acceptance with her addiction as well. And here's what I want to make clear: even though I got the tools from someone else, I still did the work on myself to make the changes. The changes happened inside of me. The answers came from me. I got help from someone, but I put in the work. I worked on my mental health every day. So, of course, I started having better experiences with counseling, and I actually did what she asked me to do in between sessions. So, if you're listening to this and realizing that you feel apathy as well, here's how to move out of it. The first step is asking yourself a series of questions. Ask yourself what the payoff for apathy is. What is your apathy allowing you to avoid? What are you afraid of? What are you ashamed of? Are you angry at yourself or your circumstance? My payoff for my apathy was I got to avoid any and all challenges. I didn't have to face my fear of being judged or my shame about my daughter's addiction, as I told yet one more person as I was asking for help what was going on in my life. I didn't have to face my perceived failures as a mother. I was angry that my daughter struggled with addiction, and I was disappointed in myself for not knowing how to help her. Apathy allowed me to avoid all of that discomfort. That's what was underneath the apathy. And that's why I didn't find a solution, because apathy is inaction. You have to take the action of going through those questions to figure out what's underneath it, what the real problem is. So, step 2 is changing your statement from I can't to I won't. And let's be honest with ourselves, that is true. It's not that we can't try, it's that we won't try. And that's a big difference. There's a major difference energetically between I can't and I won't. One is helpless and the other is defiant. Maybe it will bring up some of your anger about the situation. And anger is an emotion that causes us to take action, so it's better than apathy. And at this point, the goal is to get out of the cycle of it won't work so we can have a chance to try something new to solve our problem. The third step is stop blaming. There is so much blame in addiction. No one wins when we blame. Blame is focused on the problem and not the solution. Blame does serve a purpose. It gives you something tangible to be angry at. You get to blame whoever or whatever you think caused your child's addiction, but then what? It doesn't lead to any resolution. And in most cases, when parents talk to me about blame, they've just villainized someone they think caused their child's addiction, when we have to face the fact that our kids are willing participants. And the other part of that is when we villainize someone, and sometimes we villainize our kids too, and they're doing it to us. Their addiction is being done to us, and that's not helpful either. But the other part of that is when we villainize someone, we also become victims. Somebody else is a villain, then that means we're a victim. And that just brings us back to the vulnerability, weakness, and apathy again. It keeps us stuck in that cycle. Blaming others or ourselves is not helpful. Think about your blame and where it leads you. Has it solved anything? If it isn't solving anything, then you need to surrender the blame and move into forgiveness and acceptance. And that doesn't mean you have to be friends with the person that you're blaming or that you're saying what they did is okay. It just means that you are no longer going to carry the burden of blaming them, and you are consciously choosing to move out of being stuck in blame and into solutions. Step 4, which is the last step, is to be around people who have resolved the problem you have apathy about. Other people's energy does rub off on you. They can lift you up and you can borrow from their energy until you can create it on your own. I always envision a person who's climbing up a mountain and then bending down to help the other person, holding their hand out to help pull them up. And that's why I use that picture of several people on a mountain helping each other for my Facebook group background photo. And when I coach somebody, I lend them my belief. I know that I help myself and that I have the tools to help my clients. So I hold that space for them until they can hold it for themselves. That's why clients feel so good after just one call with me. They feel hope and relief. First, because they've done something, they took action and signed up for coaching, and they get to be in the energy of my belief in them. And as soon as I started moving out of apathy, I started surrounding myself with more positive influences. I listened to podcasts about weight loss and immersed myself in the program I joined because, remember, it was my desire to lose weight that pushed me into action. And when I moved out of apathy about my daughter's addiction, I started reading books about addiction that resonated with me. Those people who wrote those books had solutions. I watched YouTube videos about people who had solutions. I listened to podcasts that were about mindset and living a more fulfilling life. I created an environment of growth and change for myself, and you can do that for yourself as well. If you can't start with your child's addiction, then pick something else like I did with weight loss. Just start somewhere and surround yourself with people who are successful at what you want. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be books, podcasts, and social media. So just to summarize, apathy is a feeling that I can't. It's signaling that you need help, but you feel no one can help you. To step out of apathy and get help, number one, ask yourself the series of questions I mentioned earlier to get to the root cause of the apathy. Number two, change your statement from I can't to I won't. Number three, stop blaming. And number four, surround yourself with people who have already solved the problem you're dealing with. If you're stuck in apathy, take a chance that somebody can help you and reach out to me. You can sign up for a call with me using the link in the podcast notes, and I can help you start moving forward. That's all I have for today. I will talk to you next week, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about my work, go to heatherrosscoaching.com. If you want to help other parents who are struggling with a child's addiction, you can do it two different ways. First, you can share the podcast with them directly, or you can share it on your social media. Second, you can leave a review. Talk to you next week.